Wednesday, happy days. Thursday, Friday, happy days. Saturday, what a day. Rock and roll for you. This day's ours.
Oh, that's right. We are right here for Meet Me at the Diner, and boy, have I got a very, very, very special show today. We have Barbara Livingston. She is the wife of our Adjutant General for South Carolina, Major General Robert Livingston, and we've had several great conversations. In fact, Barbara, he suggested that I call and ask you to be on the show because I was asking him about families and dealing with deployments and everything, and he goes, "Well, really, Ann, you should talk to my wife, Barbara." And that's how this came together. It sure is great to have you here today.
Well, thank you for having me here. I appreciate it. It's an honor.
Well, it is going to be a very interesting conversation that we're going to have here today. You know, you, of course, being the wife of a Major General, you have seen him not actually get deployed, but he was deployed during 9/11. You said?
Yes. After 9/11, yes. Mm-hmm.
And he was in charge, you said, of really what, the East Coast troops?
He was in charge of base security for all the bases east of the Mississippi.
So
he spent a lot of time traveling. He was actually based out of an office in Fort Jackson, South Carolina. So he was still in town near the family, but he did a lot of travel out of state.
Sure.
Because he visited all the bases.
Absolutely. And, of course, you, of course, were left to deal with a lot of the family issues. But you were telling me that the biggest struggle that you had was when he was actually deployed to Afghanistan. And I'd love to talk some about that. But first I want to mention that you have 4 children. I like how you named your children. Robert III, Rachel, Rebecca, and Roxanne.
All ours. Yes, I know. And it wasn't until a friend of mine told me this. My girls are in alphabetical order.
Okay.
Rachel, Rebecca, and Roxanne, they're in age order, they're alphabetical. I didn't plan it like that. It just happened.
Well, that's very interesting. And, of course, you do work with Gregory Electric Company down there, and you also are serving on a board of a very important program that we're going to talk more about, Hidden Wounds. Mm-hmm. And you work with the USO right here for the Guard. So you are definitely involved in what is happening with our troops. And, of course, right now we have so many coming home. Mm-hmm. But then again, they're also looking at sending out more back with the Guard. The Guard really, we were talking about that earlier. The Guard really is almost like our militia. I was saying we depended on the Guard too much, and you pointed out that, go ahead and tell us what you were talking about.
The whole basis of the defense strategy of the country was based on the militia. That's what George Washington formed a militia, and that's where we come from. It's always been the militia that the National Guard has been formed from. So we live in the community. Like they say, the Minuteman is a symbol of the Guard, and he's got one hand on the plow and his other hand's on his gun, and he's ready to leave the fields and to defend his country. So that's the face of the very South Carolina National Guard. That's who we are. That's where we live. We live in the community. We are the community. And when you send the National Guard to war, you're sending the community because it can't help but affect everybody because it's your next door neighbor, it's your banker, it's your barber, it's your school teacher.
Well, they don't live on bases like Army people do. Yes.
They don't, and that's what is so unique, and that's something that people you can identify with the South Carolina National Guard because they live with you.
Absolutely. You know, and South Carolina is such a pro-military state. I mean, we are.
Mm-hmm. Lots of bases.
Lots of bases, and lots of people in the National Guard. And, you know, today we even have a lot of older, not just young people. People are staying in the military, in the National Guard, much longer, too.
They feel it's a service. As my husband says, it's something greater than himself. It's to our family and it's to the country. And that's why he does it, because he wants to serve something bigger than himself. Absolutely. And I think that's the way most people think.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think another thing we ought to bring up, and we'll probably bring this up a couple of times, is, you know, we all have learned through Vietnam and everything to thank our service people for their service to our country. And how many times have you thanked a service person for their service to their country, and their wife and family have been standing there and not said a word about it. You know, Barbara, what do you have to say about this?
I'm pretty vocal about it because we serve in a way that most people don't recognize. You see the soldier, he's in a uniform, he's got patches and badges indicating he's been in combat, but the families serve on a different front, and we've done things and seen things and had to deal with things that most people don't think about. We are very silent. You don't recognize us in a restaurant, the grocery store, or even in schools. Our children are totally unrecognizable in a school. They don't wear uniforms, but they serve. They serve because their family member is gone, whether it be mother, father, grandmother, grandfather, brother, sister. You've got children in school that are attached to a military family, and most schools don't even know it.
And yet, if you were in the military, you would probably be in a military school, living on a military base, and it would be totally different.
Totally different. It's totally different.
That's right.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we talk about all the time is if you know that some military family is living up the street from you, if you can go out and get the grass mowed for her, or take some coupons by for some food, or even take a home-cooked meal, that there is such appreciation for those little things that we take for granted so much.
You're right. When Bob left, I had a gentleman from my office that would leave work and go home to my home and mow my yard before I got home. And I would drive in from work, and my grass would be mowed. I had no idea. I mean, people did things because they realized with Bob gone, there was stuff that I couldn't do, and they just stepped in and did it. I never had to worry if I had issues because I knew I could call someone and they'd step in and do it. But it was the people that did things that I didn't even ask for that just blew me away. Just the kindness. It was wonderful.
Absolutely. And he was in Afghanistan when now?
He left in January of 2007, and then he came home in May of 2008. And then he stayed on orders through September of 2008 because being the commander of the task force that he was on, he wanted to come back to the United States and visit with the families of the service members that he had lost, to go to them and reach out to them. So he did that from June, July, August, and September.
That has to be hard on the person, and particularly because, like we said, you weren't in the Army, you weren't in the Marines, you didn't have that support of other families. How did you feel when he first went away to Afghanistan? And you have, of course, had teenage children.
Yeah, I had young adults.
Adults.
Our son, who is the oldest, he was 25 at the time, and our youngest was 18. And I was very amazed at their reaction to it.
Did you think it would be easier for them than it was, or what?
I really thought them being young adults, they would handle it. They knew why their dad was going.
Right.
He wanted to go. Again, he's always said it's something bigger than myself. He wanted to go and take his soldiers over there and be responsible for them and not send them for somebody else to be responsible for. He said, we've trained together, we've worked together, we go to war together. So when he got over there, he took 1,800 from here in South Carolina, and then when he got over to Afghanistan, he had multinational forces underneath him and also the different services too. So he had 9,000 troops under his command at that point in time, and that was his vision. He wanted to go, he wanted to make a difference, and he felt like he did. The children knew why he was going. They knew that he wanted to go, and I thought that with them being the age they were, it wouldn't affect them like it did. But I've found that there's not a good age to have a family member deployed. It affects the children in ways that we don't think about, that we don't understand, and I don't understand. I was very concerned because I was complaining that my friends didn't understand. They were trying to compare my deployment to their death of a mother or a father, saying, I understand what you're grieving, or a divorce that they had been through. And I kept saying, you don't understand. But I didn't realize I didn't understand what my kids were going through until my two youngest reacted and acted out. The youngest was at Furman University. It was her freshman year. Bob left in her spring semester in January, and she, at that point in time, were a very close family, but she never came home. She just never came home. And when she did come home, she dropped off her luggage and she left, and she was at friends' houses. She'd come back in time to get her clothes and go back up to school.
So she never spent any time with you?
Never any time with me. And I finally asked her, because I thought she was mad at me about the deployment. I thought she was mad with Bob. And she told me, she said, Mom, you just don't get it. If I come home, I know Dad's not there. If I stay at school, I can pretend he's home. I don't know he's not there. And that was an eye-opening experience for me because I didn't realize it.
You did something very similar when you talk about that. Hey, we're going to hear a word from our sponsors. When we come back, we're going to be talking about how military families cope with these type of things. Well, at least how Barbara Livingston and her family did. Don't you go away. We'll be right back.
Ready to race to you.
Gold, more precious than any other time in history. Do you have gold? Do you need cash? Then bring it to SFG. That's Sharp Facets Gallery, 1220 Bypass 72, Greenwood. Telephone 229-6613. Don't forget, we buy diamonds too. Paying the highest prices for your gold and diamonds at Sharp Facets Gallery.
Monday, happy days. Tuesday, Wednesday, happy days. Thursday, Friday, happy days. Saturday, what a day.
That's right. We are back here at Sharp Facets Gallery. We are talking with Barbara Livingston. She is the wife of Major General Robert Livingston, the Adjutant General for South Carolina. And before we get back to that, I do want to tell you it's 70 degrees, pretty cloudy. They are talking about some thunder showers this afternoon, so if you're going to be out, you might want to take that umbrella with you. Also, do want to tell you when it comes to the price of gold, earlier today we had a tumble. We'll see where we're at with the price of gold here in just a second, because I do want to tell you what the price is out there. Earlier this morning we were at $16.38, so we'll see now what's gold doing. Is it up or down, or which way are we going now? Looks like gold is at, better double check here, because it looks like it is at, well, it is at $1,638.90. Silver is still staying about the same, $31.43. You know, if you've got it to sell and you need to sell, the best place to come right here at Sharp Facets Gallery, because we will pay you the most. We pay for the diamonds, we pay for the gold, we pay for everything that goes in there, and look at the condition too. So come see us today. But Barbara, we were talking about your children and their reaction and how you actually were surprised because you thought that they could deal with it. You just told us that your one daughter just figured if she didn't come home,
right,
she wouldn't have to deal with the fact that her dad wasn't there.
That is correct. But the other daughter that was in college, she was a sophomore a junior when Bob left, and going into her senior year, she struggled with depression. And I never thought I would have a child that I had to deal with, and it caught me totally off guard. I knew that she would be the one that would struggle the most. She and my husband are very close, and I knew it was going to be tough on her. But she got to the point where she could not get up out of bed and go to class. And she didn't pass one of her classes, not because of her grades. She had to be in the class. She had missed too many classes, and because of attendance requirements, they didn't pass her for that class. So, you know,
and you went overboard trying to get her to class.
Yeah, I would call her in the mornings, like 20 minutes before class, so she could get up and go to class. And then when I hung up about 10 minutes later, my assistant would pick up the phone and call her and, say, are you up? It's time to go to class. Even to the point I got one of her friends to stop by and knock on her door and, it's time to go to class. And she just couldn't do it. Yeah. She couldn't do it. And it was a struggle. It was an absolute struggle for her. And I'll never forget, she came home for a break or a weekend or something, but she was at the house and she was in the bed asleep. And I decided it was time for her to get out of bed. It was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I said, come on, let's go. We're going to go shopping. I've got to go run some errands. You come with me. And it was horrible. I just to drag her out of the bed, I felt like I was, just beating her in its submission. But, I didn't want to go. I don't want to go. I'm going to stay here. I don't want to go. And I finally told her, I said, you can get in the car in your pajamas. I don't care, but you're going to ride with me. And we had this repartee going, and she turned and she yelled at me, and she said, "Mom," she said, "I just want to know that somebody else my age is going through this same thing." And it hit me like a slap in the face at that point in time, because I realized I had no idea what she was going through, just like my friends had no idea what I was going through. And I knew she was struggling, and I knew she was hurting, but I wasn't on the hurting end of her hurt. And I you know.
And you were the mom.
And I was the mom.
Exactly.
And so they're in a different place in their life, and they were struggling. And she was at college. Her friends did not have, you know, anyone deployed, so here she is at college, away from family, from the support network of the family, in college, and the people there, their lives are going on just very merrily, you know, with their moms and their dads in and out, and she's struggling with the separation from her dad, and it was tough. It was very tough on her.
Did she reach out to her sisters?
Yes, she did. She really did. Her older sister was in Atlanta at the time, and so Rachel did try and come home, you know, to be with her. The other daughter was just up the road at Furman, and so they would get together on the weekends and stuff. But she still, a lot of it, she just reverted into herself.
Classic signs of depression.
There you go.
That's right.
There you go. And I would never have expected it. It caught me off guard. I didn't share any of this with Bob while he was gone. In fact, he did not know that there were issues until he came home, and he said, "Why is she in the bed all the time?"
Well, in fact, you told your kids before he left, or as he left.
After he left.
That, what did you tell them?
I told him, "You don't tell your father anything that's going on in life over here that's bad. He's 8,000 miles away. He's got 9,000 troops under his command. He does not need to lose his focus for something he can't help." I said, "I don't care if you're laying in the hospital with 2 broken legs. If he calls you, you're at the mall shopping. Life is good." There was no reason to. He's 8,000 miles away. What could he do? There wasn't a thing he could do except worry, and he didn't need that. So he had enough to worry about over there. But I did tell him, I said, "All your emails, you know, you just make sure that it's all upbeat and happy." So that was what we did.
It's a lovely day in South Carolina.
It was a wonderful day in South Carolina. Well, it was so funny because after about 3 months, he emailed me and he said, "How are things?" You know, and I didn't have a lot of access to him by email or by phone because he was gone so much with his troops, and so he emailed me and he said, "You know, how are things?" And I said, "Oh, you know, life is good." You know, gave him a rundown of what I'd been doing, and he said, "You never say anything bad. Are you sure everything's okay?" And I said,
spoken like a true military man.
I said, "Yes, of course." And he said, "That's what I thought." So he knew that we weren't telling him the truth. He absolutely knew it.
Right.
But he knew that we were, you know, we were managing
you were
fine.
coping.
We were coping, and we were getting along. He would never ask, and he never asked again. So and when he came home, you know, we reintegrated him back into life, and
a little tougher than you thought.
It was an experience because we would start talking about things and forget that he had been gone for 18 months. And he was stepping back into the conversation, and we had to bring him up to speed on everything because he had no idea what we were talking about. So it was an interesting reintegration. Besides the fact that he would walk in his closet and not know what to wear because he'd worn military uniforms for so long, and I didn't really think about it, but he would go in his closet and he'd just stand and he'd look. And it got to the point where I would go in and you know, pull his clothes out and let him and match them for him. But he had been so much in the military.
They wear those fatigues all the
time. That's right. They don't have to think about what to wear. They just get up and put it on. But he struggled with that, you know, reintegrating back into civilian life and wearing civilian clothes. So it was an interesting you know, I guess entry back into life with the family. So it's been very interesting.
Absolutely. You know, before we hear South Carolina news, I want you to tell people how you coped with him being gone. What was your thought process about him being over in Afghanistan?
My thought process. I had a routine in my mind. I knew I was lying to myself, but my routine was he got up every morning, went to the gym, then he went and had breakfast, then he went to the office, signed papers, then he went back to the dining facility, he had lunch, went back to the office, signed papers, and then he went to supper, and then he went back to the gym, and then he went to bed. That was my schedule for him, and that is not it. His guys were in 240 different locations, and he made it to 180 of them, so he was not in the office.
But that's how you coped with it.
That's how I coped.
That's
right. I lied to myself.
You know, it is amazing what the mind can do to survive, isn't it?
It truly is.
And it also is amazing what our guys and gals do to survive over there when they are in battle, and what they do to themselves when they come home, which is one of the reasons that we want to talk about when we come back. We're going to be talking about hidden wounds and some of the other things, because there is so much that a person can look fine but not be okay on the inside.
That is correct.
So that's what we're going to talk about. Hey, if you've got a question for Barbara, give us a call, 229-7984. That's 229-7984. We'll be back after South Carolina News. I think we're in the news right there with Attorney General Alan Wilson. Take a listen. We'll be back.
What does WLMA stand for? Well, it stands for Wow, Let's Meet Again, right here on 1350 AM, Greenwood and the Lakelands News Talk radio station.
Monday, happy days. Tuesday, Wednesday, happy days. Thursday, Friday, happy days.
Oh, that's right. We are back here at Sharp Facet Gallery. We are talking with Barbara Livingston, having a fascinating conversation. You know, sometimes we all think that we can understand what somebody else is going through because we've all experienced something maybe similar. But, you know, until you've walked in those shoes, it's very hard to say that. And, of course, you know, sometimes we think so much about the person that's been gone, the enlisted person, the National Guard person, that we forget that the families have to still keep the pieces picked up and keep things going. So how are we going to deal with this? What are we going to do? Barbara, of course, that's one of the things that you are looking at and helping with in a lot of ways. But I thought we should really talk a little bit about when a deployment happens. You were telling me how hard it was for you to watch your husband get on that plane, and when they shut that door. Go ahead and just tell us a little bit about that.
When he left Columbia to fly to Mississippi for their training there at Camp Shelby, he was the last person to get on the plane. And he and I had been talking. He kissed me goodbye. I'm standing there. I'm watching him walk down across the tarmac, and he climbs up the steps, and they shut the door. And at that point in time, it kicked in. It was real. I had been dealing with it, you know, along and building up for it. I knew it was coming. But when they shut that door, I felt like they had sucked all the air out of my lungs, and I couldn't speak. I couldn't think. And it was a hurt that I didn't really know existed. But I was overwhelmed. It hit me in the face that it was we were starting
that journey.
Yep, starting that journey. And somebody asked me, well, how are you going to deal with it? And my only remark was, I'm taking it one day at a time, because if you look at the overall picture, they're gone for a long time. And I actually got a calendar, and I checked off the days that he was gone. And it was a visual thing for me to know one more day down, another day, and then I'd see a week, and then a month, and I'd flip the page, and it was a visual from me that we were working on getting to where we needed to be, and that was the end of the deployment. So
absolutely. Now, you also told me that that your life was literally on hold. You said when somebody gets a divorce, you move on,
right.
But when somebody is deployed,
you don't. Yeah, as I was saying, I had people that tried to console me to say, that they'd lost a loved one, or I understand, I've been through a divorce, my spouse is no longer here. But at that point in time, with a death or divorce, at some point in time you start a healing process, and your life is going to move on. Not in the way you wanted it, but it's going to move on. When Bob deployed, I tell people I hit the pause button, because my life didn't move forward and it didn't move backwards. We were where we were. There was no plans being made to go on vacation, no plans being made to do anything. You just, day by day, you plugged through life, and that was all that was the best you could hope for. You knew when they came home it would start again, but there was nothing there. And then you start to heal, but you get a phone call or an email, and the scab that you've got that's healing over that wound is picked off, and you'd go through that healing process all over again. And it was very, very tough.
Absolutely, yes. So he came back, though, and he you guys had to reintegrate him.
That's right.
I think that could be one of the most interesting parts when you have been the chief woman in charge.
That's right. Yes.
to bring the chief man back into the household.
That
they
is.
have a little bit of a problem, isn't it?
You know, and each family deals with it differently, but I do know there are a lot of struggles for, especially with children, especially younger children, because the spouse that's left behind has been the disciplinarian, and it's hard to relinquish that back and make it a partnership, and that's you've focused on yourself and you've focused on your kids and you focused on your family, and your spouse or your significant other hasn't been there, and then they come back, and it's very hard to let that happen, to become a team again. And it's some families it's harder than others. Bob and I, it was pretty easy for him to step back in, but you know, there were struggles. The funniest story I tell is he came back home, and I guess he'd been home 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It was in May, and we have those violent storms that run through, and you know, a lot of rain and high wind, and we had a tree fall across our driveway. It missed our cars, but it fell across our driveway. And we go out that morning to go to work. Bob says, when I come home tonight, I'm going to cut that tree up. And I said, okay. Well, this went on for about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe a month. The tree is still, we're having to divert ourselves to get out the driveway because the tree is still laying across it. I mean, it even started to, rot at this point in time. And so I did, after about 4 weeks of this, I knew he wasn't going to have time to do it. And so I did what I'd done for the last 18 months. I picked up the phone. I called a friend. I said, I've got a tree across my driveway. Can you come out, cut it up, and haul it off? He said, sure. I didn't think anything about telling Bob that I had done this. We come in from work that night, and he says, Barbara, what happened to the tree?
I like that tree.
he says, I was going to cut it up. What did you do? And I said, I called somebody, and they came out. I said, I knew you didn't have time. But see, I didn't take the time to think it was important that I included him on the decision and say, honey, you're not going to have time to take care of the tree. Let's just call somebody.
Right.
I just did what I always did. I took control of the situation and did it and didn't tell him. In retrospect, he wasn't mad, but he was upset that I hadn't included him in on that. And
sure.
So you kind of got to get back in the swing of actually talking to each other, and that was interesting.
Absolutely. And I think, Major General, right? I didn't tell the Major General what I was doing. Well, it's unfortunate that you don't have a official military title here, Barbara.
I'm fine with that.
You're fine with that, okay. Well, not only that, when we have a lot of military people come home, they may be fine, but when they come home, they have problems reintegrating. They have things that they've seen and had happen to them. I've talked to a lot of military guys, and one of the questions I always ask is, why won't you talk about it? And they always tell me this answer, and I'll talk to somebody else that has been there and experienced that, but I can't talk to you about it. And I always say, why? Women like to talk about this kind of stuff.
Talk about your feelings.
Yeah.
No, Bob went through the same thing. In fact, I will tell you, Bob and I have not discussed really what he did on his deployment.
And that's not unusual. No.
I did not, I still don't know a lot of what happened. I don't know any, except that he wasn't at the gym. Yeah, I found that out. I found out that he was out visiting troops every chance he could get, but I have no idea what he went through. And I would tell service members, families, that's not uncommon. They want to talk to somebody that understands. It's hard for them to talk about it, and they can talk about it with others. So if you've got a loved one that's been deployed, don't be offended. Don't try and pull it out of them. What I hear from Bob, I hear when he's talking with other people. But I have never picked him for information, and it's just it'll come out when it comes out, and it might not even come out to me. But he does speak with other people, and that's how he deals with it. Like I've told him, there's a lot that went on back over here that he doesn't know about, and it's just the way it is. But that's not something for families to worry about unless they see signs of depression and things like that, and that you're having your service member is having issues. At that point in time, you need to refer them, because the service member can't recognize the fact that they're having issues. It's the family that sees and notices the changes.
And sometimes it's frustrating for the family because they don't really know where to turn or what to do. And our military hasn't been real good on dealing with these issues. It's kind of been something that's been set aside, hasn't it?
Some, yes, it has. I think maybe the military itself hasn't set it aside, but I think that sometimes our service members are afraid to go for help. They're afraid that there's a stigma attached to it. And my husband will be the first one to stand up in front of a group of soldiers or airmen and say, I went to war, and I came home a different person. He did come home changed. He's always been a very loving, low-key type of person, but there are times I know his fuse gets short. Not that anybody would notice it but me, but it's so totally different. It's just different, and it's nothing bad. It's not good or bad. It's just he's changed, and
they always say that war changes people.
It does. I notice it a lot when he's driving. He's very aggressive, and I can't deal with this person that's going slow in front of me and stuff. And it's like, it's okay. I mean, not that he's a careless driver, but you see that he has his tolerance level for things.
A lower level of aggravation.
Very much so. And then there's some that have that tendency more than he does. But he's changed, and he'll tell you he had bad dreams. He still has bad dreams. They're not as frequent as they were, but he has bad dreams. And I would wake him up in the middle of the night just to reassure him that I was there. But things like that happen, and you just have to deal with it. Love them.
Absolutely. And of course, that's part of the thing, the Hidden Wounds. It's a relatively new organization.
That it is correct. We've been in existence about, I guess, a little over 2 years now. It's to provide interim and emergency counseling services for service members, and we are trying to fill the need, a gap that the Veterans Administration, they've got such an overload. You think how many people we're sending out in service, and then they come home and they have needs. So the Veterans Administration can't see you the day you need it.
Sure.
And there's service members that do have issues, that depression and stuff like that, and they need somebody. And at that point in time, they can call Hidden Wounds, and we just fill the gap between them getting help through the VA or whatever services they need.
Absolutely. And one of the things I think I read in Hidden Wounds is that they're trying to work something out so that they can, that with the HIPAA laws, because that is to allow them to be able to talk to other people.
Yeah, that is correct. There's legal issues there and HIPAA issues, but we do have volunteers who are trained to talk with these service members and then find them referral help. So we don't do the counseling ourselves. We are just and it's other service members that volunteer for this, because again, like you said, service members want to talk to other service members so they can identify with what they've been through. And so our team counsels, but speaks with them and then directs them to someone that they can speak to that can help them.
Absolutely. Now, this organization was actually founded by a sister.
Yeah, that is correct. That is correct.
Her brother died.
He's, as she says, he succumbed to his hidden wounds, Anna Biden. So, yes, she's very passionate about this, as you can imagine, and doing everything that she can to get us funding to help, because we actually pay the counseling services if, in fact, the service member can't pay it. So we do try and get the word out, and she's working hard to be the face of Hidden Wounds in her brother's honor.
Absolutely. And, this was founded in Marine Lance Corporal Mills Palmer Bingham. And he said he feels like everyone can see what I've done. I can't live this way. That is such a tragedy that he didn't get the help that he needed. Anna's
been, that's what drives her, is to honor Mills.
And we've seen other people, though, that have had these same issues, and suicide is something that has been increasing. I don't know if it's decreasing now, but I know that suicide was increasing, and we have so many service people coming home from Afghanistan and, of course, Iraq. So these are issues that need to be dealt with. You shouldn't look away. I think that's the thing. I think we think that they need an adjustment period, and I think they do, but there are other issues that are more serious.
You know, talking about an adjustment period, it used to be that when they came home within the National Guard, they said, oh, we're going to give them, 60 days, 90 days to relax and get back into it. But we found that during those 30, 60, 90 days, that's when they need to be seeing, and reintegrating with the soldiers they served with, because they've been together night and day for the deployment, and then they come home and they've got no military support. So we found that we try and bring them back. We have 30-day, 60-day, and 90-day programs for them. At that point in time, they come back, and that way we can look at them and say, are you doing okay? How are things? How is life? And if there are issues, they're more apt to talk to you about it in that setting. So we do follow up 30, 60, and 90 days with these briefings to bring the family in and the service member in to briefings that we have planned out for them and classes and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Now, one of the good things that has been happening is the job fairs and getting employers more involved with our service people, because it is a travesty. We have such well-qualified people. They've learned great skills and everything, and then they come back, and of course it is a tough job market just for those that are in the regular job market, but there's been a real effort to do that.
Yeah, that was one thing that Bob has really wanted within the National Guard, and Fort Jackson has also been having job fairs. But the struggles that a military family goes through during the deployment, for them to have struggles continue, especially financial troubles, when the service member comes home because there's no job. Right. For whatever reason, the job is not there. And what he tries to explain to employers is only 1% of the total United States serves in the military.
Right.
That 1%, 20% of every the group of people that apply for the military, there's only 20% that actually can step into the military because of being drug-free, education, and stuff like that. So what we're giving you is the cream of the crop in having employees that you would want to come in and work for you, because they come in drug-free, they come in with an education, they come in with a work ethic, because you don't work 9 to 5 when you go off, to war. It's till you get the job done. And we actually had a soldier that worked for us at Gregory Electric, and he redeployed, and my job site superintendent was standing on the job site crying when he left. He goes, I can't believe he's one of my best workers. Please tell him when he comes back, we want him back on the job. He was here every day, and it's just that kind of person, and it's the kind of person that you want working for you.
And it's so demoralizing when we can't find them jobs.
It is. It's tough. It really is.
So now, one of the things you were telling me is that you and your husband Bob actually talk to employers when there is a deployment, and to help them deal with this.
That's something that we've just started. I work also with the Employer Supportive Guard and Reserve, and they bring in we've just started bringing in the employers, asking the soldiers that are getting ready to deploy who your employer is, and then contacting that employer and saying, we're having a pre-deployment briefing, we'd like you there. Bob would give an overview of kind of where they're going and what they're going to do. And then I spoke, interestingly enough, on behalf of the family, my family memories of Bob's deployment, but also as an employer, because when Bob stepped away, he was president, and still is, president and chief financial officer of Gregory Electric. But he left for 18 months.
And so how did that feel?
Well, it was put the weight of the company on the VPs that report to him, and the manager of administration, and me as the director of human resources. And we had a lot of stuff that we had to pull for him, while he stepped away, because there wasn't any emailing back and forth of, this is what's happening, what do you want us to do about it? you know, we just dealt with it, and you think, you know, that's what happens when you have someone deploy. You've got a void there that you've got to fill.
And that's hard for small companies.
It's hard for small companies, but it's very very rewarding. And we had one employer said, well, hey, if I give you this soldier, can you send me another one to fill his place? You know, that's not a bad idea. We can, you know, can
partner up here,
and send temporaries in to, you know, to work while the soldier is gone. So it's a good thing. The job fairs have been well attended. It's not only for the active guardsmen, it's also for veterans and stuff, and spouses. So we've had good attendance at the job fairs, and we just, you know, appreciate the employers that have come out and supported them and offered our soldiers and airmen jobs.
Don't you think that has to do with getting the word out there? You know, sometimes I think people don't know what they can do. I think there's a lot of people that want to help and want to do things, but they just don't know what to do.
That is correct. I know people would ask me during the deployment, well, what is it that we can do? You know, what can we do to help? And, you know, you hit with that and you go, oh, my gosh, I can't think of anything right now. But, yeah, you know, we've gotten better at it. We do know that there are things that we need. We've got a great, with the National Guard, J1.1 Directorate, which is J stands for joint, the 1 is for personnel. So, anyway, Colonel Ronnie Taylor heads that up. And
we've had him on the radio before.
There you go. Yes, you have. So he's got, you know, just all kind of things that he needs for, you know, for him to do his job, and jobs for our employees is one of them. It's a great directorate, and
you know, it would be helpful if there were things out there, because people sometimes, it's hard for people to think, I know they're living up the street, I don't really know them that well, I'd like to do something, but then again, people sometimes think that they're intruding on people's lives. Did you ever feel that somebody was intruding if they tried to do something good for you?
No, I never felt that way. I never
but
did.
I think people think that way, and particularly the way our society has become. We're not, we're texters and emailers, but we're not that close personal contact, like go out and sit on the front porch and talk the way we used to do.
You're right. That we've become very impersonal about a lot of things, and I think that's a lot of people's hesitancy is they don't want to make a personal connection. They don't want to intrude, but they're, you know, supporting the service family. It's they would appreciate whatever you would want to do. I can tell you that.
Absolutely.
It's the little things, and people don't think about, you know, that little things a lot of times mean so much.
Absolutely. It's that coming home and not having to fix dinner because somebody's brought dinner by and dropped it off.
There you go. Come by and mowed your yard, and you're surprised. It's the little things.
So I guess one of your big messages would be for people that are listening here today?
I guess the big thing is supporting the service members, but supporting the family too. Yeah. They're left behind, and like I said before, you don't recognize us anywhere. We don't wear uniforms. You don't know us unless you know our service member. So it's a good thing. When I know that people care, I feel good about what my husband's doing.
Absolutely. So if you know that family member, you know, you can say thank you to that serviceman, but you can also say thank you to that service family. And I think particularly the kids. The kids need that warmth.
They need to know that what their mother, father, sister, brother is doing is important. They do. And there's been a study done that says that children deal better with deployments if they know that what their family is doing is recognized as being a good thing and that the community supports it.
Absolutely. So if you know somebody that is deployed or is going to be deployed, try to think of some nice things. Think about some things that you'd like to have done for you.
That's right.
Yeah.
Babysitting. Sometimes that's critical because you think about it, you're there with the kids and there's just no way to get away, and that's a big thing. I know that some of our families do struggle with that, being able to have time away from the children.
Sure.
And it's just simple things like that.
Absolutely, or making sure that somebody gets to a soccer practice or a baseball practice or whatever. Well, Barbara, it certainly has been a pleasure to have you here. Hidden Wounds, we just should mention this one more time. This is a relatively new program, but it is out there to help those. hiddenwounds.org, that's the name of the website, hiddenwounds.org. There is so much more help out there than there was just 5 years ago, I think, Barbara.
There's an awareness. People are beginning to realize that support is needed, and I think those support groups are popping up.
Absolutely. So if you can support, we didn't have time to talk about the USO, but you're also involved in the USO.
Yes.
We'll have to have you back again. I hope you come back and talk to us again.
I'd love it. Thank you so much.
All right. This is WLMA right here in Greenwood, South Carolina. Our very special guest today has been Barbara Livingston. She is the wife of Adjutant General for South Carolina, Major General Robert Livingston. That's a big mouthful, Barbara.
Yes, it is.
It is. But we appreciate you coming up here today. Bye-bye, everybody.